Hey guys, welcome back to Radio 815, the podcast dedicated to discussing the work of writer-director J.J. Abrams, as well as his greater Bad Robot universe. I'm your host for this time around. My name is Marcelo Inostroza, joined as always by my fellow co-host, Matt Crandall. And on today's edition of the show, we'll continue making our way through the one and only season of Alcatraz. Today, we'll be covering episode 5, entitled Guy Hastings. So, Matt, I have a question for you. Um, are you sure this is your house? I don't think you belong here.
I might not belong here. We'll have to find out. And this episode, Guy Hastings finally swerves a bit from the formula we've been used to, which is following an inmate as they return from Alcatraz into the future. This one is about a guard from Alcatraz. But more importantly, this is a lot of backstory of Ray Archer, Uncle Ray, who we met in the pilot and have kind of shied away from. So Robert Forster, the great character actor from Jackie Brown, was like Rebecca's, adopted uncle. And through the flashbacks in this, seeing him as a young guard being trained by Guy Hastings, we come to learn that he might actually be like her actual great uncle. And I did like that, so far a lot of these inmates coming back or whatever have been interesting, but like none of the actors ended up being like people that you like recognize. And I think this one, now at the time, Robbie Amell, who plays young Ray Archer, was probably nobody. He was just, the cousin of Arrow. But now Robbie Amell is like a TV star in his own right. He's done a lot of stuff. And so having him as young Ray made me interested in that character right away, because I'm like, oh, I know this actor. I like his work, Upload and this kind of thing. And especially Guy Hastings, who at the time, Jim Parak was already like an established TV star from True Blood. He was Hoyt, and he guest starred on this. And of course, now he just wrapped up a big run on 911 Lone Star as Judd. Everybody's like lovable redneck guy. And so having him be the main guy, I'm like, okay, well, I like this actor. So immediately I already care more about this character than these like no name actors we've been dealing with, which sounds harsh because, again, when this show aired in 2012, it's not like Jim Parak is an A-lister, but like he's a character actor that had done a ton of work, and like seeing a guy that I'm like, this is an established guy I know, it immediately made me interested in what was going on, and especially because all of the flashbacks are kind of swirling around this Ray and Tommy business that's connected to Rebecca, that I'm more invested, because it's giving me a backstory that's important to one of our main trio. So it doesn't feel like fluff of the week. It actually feels like some of this could be building up to be important to our main objective going down the road. Did you feel that this felt a little bit more substantial than just some, the returning 63 villain of the week?
I did, because I had mentioned, and you had mentioned in weeks past, that it would behoove the writers if they actually connect the villain of the week, or in this case, for this episode, the person coming back from 63 to our main team. And I love the way that this episode did that. And I also love the way that this episode really, really fed out the main mystery of the show as to how these 63s could have possibly come back. And the way that this episode is framed, it frames it as the individual or the organization that is responsible for the 63s coming back isn't actually a bad organization. Why do I say that? Because of the guard that came back in this episode, and his connection to Rebecca's grandfather Ray actually makes me question where his motives really lie. Like, is he is he somehow connected to the whole reason of why these criminals were able to travel from from the 60s to our present day? So this episode really delves deep into the mystery box aspect of the show, and I really, really, really ate that up. It's not perfect, but it's a step in the right direction, if you ask me.
Yeah, and as you said, they give us a lot of things that we haven't had before. So, we've seen Hauser and them asking other 63s, like, where were you? Who took you? What happened? And they don't have any answers. And in this, Guy Hastings doesn't give us a ton of answers, but he lets us know that one day they rounded them up and told them that there was an infection and that his whole family had died and that they had to go with some mysterious people, and that, he was fed false information that his family was dead. Then they were taken, and then he's fuzzy on like where they've been and what's been going on. But I thought that was interesting that it wasn't like a lightning storm and all these guys just disappeared. There was a cover story that was fed to them to get him to go. So it's interesting because we don't know, we haven't encountered anybody else that was actually told anything about this, presumably because the inmates, they could just march to wherever this nefarious or not nefarious people wanted them to go. They could just say like, you don't have a choice, come with us. But Guy Hastings was like a good guy, an independent guy. And so they had to come up with a story to get him to leave Alcatraz and go wherever they went. And so I thought it was interesting. And that becomes a big thing as we go, because Madsen visits his daughter to get some information. And then when it comes to like that he thought his whole family was dead, she can share that, actually your daughter's alive. Don't do what you're doing, and we can try and make sure we can patch this up and you can at least see her. And so I did like that, even though, not to jump too far ahead, Hauser does take Guy to at least see his daughter from afar. And I thought that was a really nice moment. And I think it's partly because we know Hauser was a guard at Alcatraz, so he's probably a little bit invested, even if it didn't seem like him and Guy knew each other very well or were very close. But that was interesting. And now we have a guy that is going to be presumably, in Hauser's super Alcatraz or whatever, who is not on the bad guy's side inherently. He was doing bad things when he came back, but that's because he was really on a quest to find Tommy, who he knew had returned and was trying to track him down. So I thought that was interesting. And bringing Tommy back, Rebecca's grandfather, who her partner died the day that they were chasing him. We still have tons of questions, and we get some more answers, because in the flashbacks, we find out that, young hotshot guard Ray Archer comes to Alcatraz. He sees Tommy. Tommy flips out, beats his ass. And then Guy is like, I don't know, man, you got jumped on your first day. Does this guy know you? And Ray swears up and down that him and Tommy don't have a relationship. They don't know each other. And to prove it, Ray has to beat Tommy within an inch of his life so that, the inmates don't think they can get one over on the guards. But we do find out through the course of this, they are in fact brothers. So Ray and Tommy are brothers. And, this is Rebecca's grandfather. So that's why I said, like, I guess it's like her great uncle rather than like her actual uncle. Because she always just thought it was her grandfather's friend who has basically raised her entire life because of what happened on Alcatraz. But now we realize like they are blood, they are family. And the other key thing, as Guy is going to great lengths to find Tommy, and he's not believing any of the stories that Ray is feeding him of like, Tommy died, here's his grave. There's no family members left. I don't know what to tell you. And of course, he susses out that Rebecca is related. And then we do find out by the end that Ray, present day Ray, knew that Tommy had returned. And I think this is kind of crucial information because we met Ray in the pilot, but he hasn't had any presence in these last 3 episodes. So for them to bring him back as like Rebecca's father figure, and he knows about this strange occurrence, is interesting if they play it right, because then we can get some good conversations between, you know, adopted father and daughter about the phenomena that's happening. Do you think they're going to be able to bring Robert Forster as old Ray into the fold in a meaningful way? And especially because we find out that Hauser approached him first.
I'm really glad that you brought in old Ray's accountability with the overall mystery of the show, because I don't think that they handled that reveal that he knows more about what Rebecca is doing with Hauser and Soto with the 63s. If they wanted to do that, I would have appreciated it if the writers had him be involved with Rebecca a little bit more early on to build the bond between the both of them. So in this episode, when Rebecca finds out that her uncle, the guy who essentially raised her, is lying to her, from a storytelling perspective, you can drop that emotional bond much quicker, and you can plant the seeds of distrust in between the two of them, and you can have them split apart in this episode instead of in the episodes that we have in the weeks to come. Now I'm not saying in the weeks to come that Rebecca's grandfather, Ray, won't be involved, but it would have been great to have the writers build on that family unit, and then have it, tear at the seams a little bit in this episode when Rebecca finds out that Ray isn't telling her the whole truth. And then, as you mentioned, at the end of the episode, we found out that Hauser initially tried to recruit Ray when he tried to make this Alcatraz team to round up the 63s, like over 10 years ago. But he said no because he had a little girl at home to raise, which ended up being Rebecca Manson. So I really like what the writers are going to potentially do with this relationship. I just wish that they would have planted. I just wish that they would have given us more character work between old Ray and Rebecca early on. So Rebecca finding out this story bomb about Ray potentially knowing more about the 63s, that could have hit a little bit better.
Yeah, you're right. And if they had, if Ray had been in even half of these episodes so far, we would have cared a little bit more. And I do think that this show, my frustration has been that we've spent so much time in the flashbacks that we aren't getting enough time with the team. And that is evidence in this episode, because as you said, if we had spent more time with Ray, then it would have hit harder. And also, like, half the time in these episodes, Madsen and Soto feel like they only get like 5 to 10 minutes of screen time each, and they're the fucking leads of the show. So it's like a little bit wild that, you're billing it as Hurley and this blonde lady solve these supernatural things, and they're only in 4 scenes an episode. Like, that's starting to shift. Hopefully they can shift the balance so that it's more satisfying. This only felt like a step in the right direction because we are tied to the character of Ray Archer in the past, right? Because we did spend a lot of time in the past again. And even the little scenes we get with Madsen and Soto are so entertaining that you're like kind of banging your head against a wall that we don't get more. And I loved when they need to get information and they need to hack. And so Soto gets like the dude who works at his shop to like help them. And Madsen's like, this is the guy? This is like the 17-year-old who's manning the counter. Soto's like, what can I say? Like, this he's good. Like he's doing the thing. So I like moments like that. And I'm not saying that we need like tons of levity, but I just feel like I feel like I'm a broken record where I say like that core three aren't in the show that much. So it's just confusing because at least on Lost, which had the same ratio of like present day to flashbacks, all of the flashbacks were about characters who are in the present day. So it wasn't like, we didn't see Jack for 32 minutes out of 44 minutes. No, because if Jack was in the flashbacks, right? So like we would spend most of the running time with our characters. And that's the like one ingredient that's just miscalculated so far. But I think like they have lots of time to retool it. And I especially liked at the end when Rebecca finds out that Hauser had approached Ray to help him with the 63s long time ago. She says, okay, wait a minute. And then you brought me into the fold and you made it seem like it wasn't that important that I was brought into the fold. Like you were doing me a favor of being part of this team. But obviously, if you tried to recruit my great uncle and now you have recruited me, you need me. Like my grandfather, Tommy, is more important to this shit than almost anything. If you felt we need to get one of his family members on the team. And so I like what she kind of says, like, I'm done taking orders because you need me here. So you're going to have to, it's my way or the highway or I'm getting the fuck out of here. And I thought it was like a great moment where she gets to realize her importance and her worth. And hopefully going forward, she can get more out of Hauser. Because if she doesn't, then she's gone.
Speaking about Hauser, how long does he expect Soto and Rebecca to not be curious about how big his Batcave under Alcatraz is? I mean, there has to be a point where Rebecca and Soto are fully read into everything having to do with the Batcave underneath Alcatraz, because Hauser has this whole team of nerds figuring out the mystery behind these keys that our villains have been collecting from episode to episode. So I wonder how long it's going to take Rebecca and Soto to actually press Hauser to reveal all of the plot, because to your point, even though Rebecca has this hanging over Hauser with Hauser needing her more than she needs him, but there has to be a moment when the ground is going to sink beneath her feet. I don't know how long Rebecca has to actually hold this over Hauser's head. Speaking of Hauser for a second, did you like him being more involved in this episode, or was that just a placebo effect for me? Because, like you mentioned, this episode was anchored with the main guest star of the week being connected to our main characters, and that just sort of made this episode feel a lot better than the previous episodes.
Yeah, I think, especially because, like, man, if it takes them 8 days to film an episode, Sam Neill worked for one afternoon on this episode. You know what I mean? Like this had to be a really cushy job for Sam Neill, where he just showed up. He shows up for 5 hours a week to film his shit. Like he's barely in this, but he makes the most of his time. It did feel like more of a presence, especially because he shows up as things go sideways with Guy in the big like finale, and then he gets the nice scene in the rain in the car. But again, I'm like, what are we doing where we've got Sam Neill and we're like barely getting him to do anything per episode? And it did feel, because it was connected to his past as well, that he was in it more, but I want more. You've got a great core trio. Why are we benching them for 55% of the episodes runtime? It just blows my mind. But as you said, how long until Soto and Rebecca find out about what Hauser's actually been doing? It has to be soon. And that final scene where Rebecca says, you need me, man, I don't need you, I think has to be like the impetus that if it's not next week, it's gotta be the week after. Otherwise, I'm gonna start to call bullshit, because I think, now that she's realized this, hopefully she will say, you got to be straighter with us. And every time we capture one of these guys, where the fuck are they going? Has to be a question that they're wondering, because they've given a bullshit cover of like, oh, we transfer them to some other prison. Yeah, but those were all inmates. But like, this dude, obviously he did some violent stuff in this episode, but he was a guard. So like, are we just going to throw him in jail and lock away the key? No, where is he? Let me know where he went. So I just hope that we tackle that sooner rather than later, especially because, and of course this show didn't succeed, but the way it was going to succeed is you need to stack the mythology early to get us hooked. And I think, again, just the ratio of mythology to circumstance of the week to charismatic characters was just off. And if they had found a better way to hit that and give us more of the mythos and open that mystery box further, because you got to give us a little glimpse inside. Otherwise, we're not going to care about it anymore. As like Lost did so brilliantly, they teased a lot of stuff out, but for every 2 teases, they gave you one answer. And like, that just kept you going. And so far, this has just been like, we haven't gotten an information dump of answers. And the ones that we have gotten haven't been all that interesting. Hastings being told that his family was dead and that they had to evacuate or whatever is the most interesting thing we've found out in these last couple episodes. And that's just not enough to keep the fans waiting.
I keep hoping, like you, that Sam Neill will be more involved with the show, but hearing you talk about what his shooting schedule could have been like on the show, I'm kind of thinking now you're going to call this blasphemy because it's Sam Neill and it's Alan Grant and he's the best and he will always be the best. But it would have been better if they got a potential character actor to play Hauser. Somebody from the Bad Robot stable that could actually be more integral to the show. Do you think that the writers wanted to put in Sam Neill a little bit more, but because of his availability, they couldn't do that?
I don't know. I just think that they thought they had enough, because, Sam Neill obviously is near and dear to my heart because of Jurassic and because of In the Mouth of Madness and all that kind of stuff. But in his intervening years, like when this was, he really was a TV guy. Like, he was on The Tudors. He did a show called Crusoe, Happy Town, all right before this. And then even after this, he was on a series called Harry. Like, he was a real TV guy for a while. And this was back in the time where, like, it wasn't necessarily cool for, like, a guy who was doing movies to then do TV, which, of course, now the lines have blurred so far that, like, we wouldn't be surprised if Brad Pitt and George Clooney are on a show on HBO, right? Like, it's different time. So I don't know. I just feel like this must have been a cushy job, because they didn't use him much, but he's there as the, like, with Sam Neill in the credits. So, like, they had to pay him. But I just wonder, again, it's a thing where they aren't using any of them. Hurley is barely in this. Rebecca, kind of, but like, you guys got a good bench. Just use it.
Mm. I was thinking about somebody now with the age of this actor, you would have to change Hauser's story a little bit. But if you wanted to make it a true Lost reunion, why not have the role of Hauser be played by the actor who plays Desmond Hume in Lost, right? I mean, you'd have to tweak Hauser's story a lot, but that would have been really really cool to see Desmond and Hurley be on a show about Alcatraz, and maybe if they had more of a journeyman actor like he was, um they could have utilized the character of Hauser a little bit more, you know. But maybe, like Matt's saying, it's right down the line. Maybe they just didn't do the story formula correct, and that's why it it went the way it went.
Yeah, it could be. And again, it's one of those things where like, this was so close to when Lost finished.
Yep.
They couldn't put more than one Lost actor in this without it feeling like a lost cash grab. You know what I mean? Like, it would be too distracting. Like, if it was, you know, Jorge Garcia and Dominic Monaghan, like, it would just be too close. Like, we wouldn't be able to do anything without us thinking of Hurley and Charlie. So, like,
Right.
I feel like, and not that the Lost actors were trying to break away from Lost, but a lot of them really wanted to jump into roles quickly to like keep doing work rather than just fade away and have like this one legendary show be their only thing.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, like, for some people it worked and for some it didn't. Like, you know, unfortunately, Jorge Garcia is one of those guys, like, this was his shot. And then he's done like some other small stuff, but he hasn't really led anything as like the main guy, right?
The only people that really broke away from the Lost cast is Jin, because he was on Hawaii Five O for almost a whole run, and Evangeline Lilly also broke away. And
So Michael Emerson is the guy who, like, I would say has had the strongest career post Lost, but he also had a good career before Lost, right? Like,
right.
He's been on so many shows, and especially now where like he's in with the Kings, Robert and Michelle King. Like, he was on Evil, he's on Elsbeth with his wife Carrie Preston. The dude, you know, has people that like working with him, and of course, if he pops up in anything, my first instinct is Benjamin Linus. You can't trust him, and 90% of the time he plays a character you can't trust. But yeah, I think you're right. Daniel Day Kim, especially because Hawaii Five-O was like a pretty big hit, but like, we've been waiting for these people to really have another thing, and by the time you're hearing this, we'll know if Josh Holloway has another hit or not. He did do that sci-fi show that Hughes worked on, but it only ran 3 seasons, and then it kind of faded away.
Oh, that was on the Sci-Fi Channel. That was Carlton's joint, right? To use it.
Yeah, was it Colony?
Yeah, the Colony. Yeah, that was Colony. Yeah.
And it was fine, but again, it was just like a small potato show because it was on a channel that nobody watched. So It's been interesting to watch these Lost and Bad Robot alums that literally like are incredible actors, but it's hard for them to break out of. Lost is such a huge show. Even now, like, you still, when Lost went from, you know, Hulu and Disney Plus to Netflix, it was like a big deal because so many more people could watch Lost. And it's just crazy. This show, Alcatraz, doesn't have, it's rare for like, you know, a show to be as huge a hit as Lost, but Bad Robot has multiple shows that are just a tier below Lost. Like, I would argue, Alias and Fringe, and even as much as I don't love it, Westworld are like in that tier just below Lost, where like respectable runs, people like them, they still find fans. And then you get shows that people don't even remember ever happened. Like, what about Brian?
Yep.
What was that show? 6 Degrees? Is that one of them? There was a Zoe Saldana show, whatever that was. And
Yeah, 6 degrees.
yeah, and you're like, okay, these don't have any sort of cultural impact. And then there is like the sci-fi ones that have a small cult following, Almost Human, Alcatraz. Revolution, I guess, would be, it wouldn't be that second tier, but it would be just below.
That was a big one.
Yeah.
From what I can remember, because I was on NBC and Jon Favreau directed the pilot, and I remember there being a small fervor over that one for sure.
Yeah, well, and especially because, it was Bad Robot, it was Eric Kripke from Supernatural. It was like, had a lot of the juice, and then it didn't run that long, but it still has like fans who will bring it up to this day. But this show that we're talking about, and again, just because there wasn't a lot of meat on the bone for our main characters, this isn't a show that has like a big cultural footprint. And you're in the States and you were able to watch this. Is this on Hulu or something?
No, this is actually on Tubi, but
Tubi.
I watch it through yeah. I watch it through other ways. So I mean,
and this is not streaming in Canada, so I had to buy it on YouTube to be able to watch on Google Play or whatever, because it's not like those other shows that like streamers are begging for. Like I said, like Lost, Alias, those are always somewhere. You're always going to find the Felicity or whatever is going to be somewhere because people still clamor for it. But this show obviously cut short, and I fans are, people who listen to these episodes are like, why is this motherfucker always talking about the show getting cut short and whatever? It's just the sad circumstances of how they were made.
Our fault.
Right. And like this show, it is entertaining. Like, this isn't torture for me watching this. There's not a lot of meat on the bone, but I just keep thinking like, man, it is a cool concept, a great cast.
Yeah.
How did this not become more? And of course, it's early. We still got 6 episodes left or whatever, or 7. So like we got time to maybe have it develop into something that I will look back on more fondly, especially, taking a quick look at IMDb, which always can be skewed. It does look like the ratings start to, in terms of like fans reviewing episodes, the last few are the highest rated episodes of Alcatraz. So I feel like maybe it's not going to be a show that falls off a cliff mid-season. It's going to be able to have some sort of impact by the end.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's hope so. Because listen, this is nowhere near 11/22/63, which really, really, really was a gut punch in my neck and that really destroyed me. Because I remember that show being really, really fondly. But let's hope that Alcatraz does not do that for us. But I think that will bring this week's edition of Radio 815 to a close. Listen, guys, if you want to contact us with comments or questions, you can email us. We are at radio815@aol.com. If we get an email from you, we will give you a shout out on the show. And if you want to listen to us, we are available pretty much everywhere. Just search Radio 115 and you'll be able to listen to our back catalog of episodes. But Matt, if the folks at home would like to try and reach you but not be so successful, where can they go about doing that?
We can log some movies over at letterboxd.com/MDC3000. And if you follow me, I'll follow you back. I can see what you're rating. If I do any reviews of, whatever I'm watching, or you can make a comment when I give undoubtedly the new Jurassic World, like a much higher rating than anybody else deems worthy, you can comment and tell me why it's wrong.
Why it's mid, definitely. Why it's mid, definitely. Uh, who knows how's it going to be? But hey, if you guys want to reach out to me, you can reach out to me on X or Twitter. I'm at CreekFanatic88, and you can also reach out to me on Letterboxd at the same handle, CreekFanatic88. But until next time, thank you guys so much for listening. And as I say often, we'll talk back soon.
Radio 815 is a Balloonhead Productions presentation in association with Killer Newt Productions.